Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another live at the Waterhole with WildEarth and Africam. We've started out the day at the fabulous Tower Waterhole and enjoying a little bit of birding with some what look to be black-winged stilts having a little meander along the shores, those very, very long legs. But thank you so much for joining us. My name is Ben Coley. I'll be looking after you for the next couple of hours, and we'll be visiting a huge variety, hopefully, of cameras, depending on what is out there, and seeing all the fabulous African wildlife that is on offer today. Now, don't forget, this is a live and interactive show, so it would be fabulous to hear from you. Your questions, your comments, any thoughts that you might have about what we're seeing, any questions about nature in general that have baffled you for a long time, and I will do my absolute best to answer what I can. But for now, a lovely tranquil scene here at Tau Game Lodge up in the northwest of South Africa. Everybody seems to be fairly non-committal today, though. These stilts, just enjoying, I assume the weather. We'll have to see if it is clear skies there, but it certainly looks like it from the reflection in the water. Looks like there might be a little bit of wind around. Possibly they're just staying out of the blustery conditions for now. Oh, look, there's a beautiful waterbuck bull, two waterbuck bulls, and a spoonbill, two spoonbills, three spoonbills. I always love seeing these waterbucks. I think they're magnificent animals. Those long, shaggy coats and those spectacular scimitar-like horns. They're one of my favourite antelope out there. Much bigger than you think as well when you see them in person and close up. They're quite animals, a lot stronger than you would think. You can see they're very muscular, very, very well built, quite capable of defending themselves, possibly an adaptation to be able to swim, having strong shoulders and a strong pelvis for those back legs to propel them through the water. Maybe we'll be lucky and watch one come down for a drink. They're not generally water-dependent animals, but they will obviously take the opportunity where they can. They are normally territorial, the males, so whether this is one tolerating another male in his territory because he's feeling charitable and sharing his water, I'm not so sure, but they will also form bachelor herds in times where they're unable to hold a territory or it seems fruitless to do so. I see we've got a couple of messages coming through. Mercedes Bean, greetings to you. Happy Friday indeed. Start of another hopefully great weekend for everybody. And Lenny, good afternoon to you as well. Thanks very much for joining me and us, the Wild Earth community. But yeah, never underestimate a waterbuck. I actually know somebody who had a very nasty injury from a waterbuck. They were living on one of these general game reserves, one of these wildlife estates, and they were out walking their dog. And I think for whatever reason, the dog came across the waterbuck, or the waterbuck bumped into them. As far as I know, the dog was on a lead. And the waterbuck took exception to this and started to get aggressive and actually charged towards the pair of them. And this lady ended up being skewered through her leg, thankfully just missing her femoral artery, but got a horn pretty much through one side of her thigh and out the other. And if it wasn't for the dog that was obviously protecting its owner and sort of yapping that the waterbuck was able to chase the waterbuck off, and thankfully she recovered, but it only just missed her femoral artery. So these antelopes, yes, they're very, very beautiful, and we tend not to think of them as aggressive animals, but anything that feels backed into a corner or threatened is a good reminder just to give animals plenty of space, even those ones that you may not consider to be particularly perilous. Lovely herd of wildebeest as well, again with those horns. something not to be trifled with, as many a predator has found out over the years. Nice to see what I assume to be the dominant bull at the back there. You can see him towering over those females. A little bit larger, a little bit more stocky, a little bit more well built. Looking after his little, I suppose you'd call it a harem of females, but he's really looking after his territory and hoping those females remain in what is an excellent territory for a wildebeest. Access to water, access to some nice short grass, and plenty of shelter in the tree line there. So no wonder he's attracted a group of potential lady friends. Leo, you're asking if there are any animals that recover from injuries faster than any others. Um, there are none that I can think of where you think, oh, well, that particular species will be fine because they're well known for their power of recovery. Most animals out there will recover. I think the ones that possibly engage in a little bit more licking of their wounds will potentially do better just because of the level of antibiotic material within the saliva and the ability to keep that wound clean. But that will obviously also be dictated by where the wound is and whether it can be reached. We know that the cats heal very, very quickly. This is, of course, in terms of sort of lacerations and bleeding wounds. In terms of a potential muscular injury or a bone-based injury, I don't know of any that are likely to recover more quickly than any others off the top of my head. But I've seen it many times before. We all have as guides. We see these animals which, with what we consider to be potentially crippling injuries, and they just carry on. They can't afford not to. And they have incredible, I wouldn't say immune systems, but incredible ability to recover quickly. Waterbucks wading around in that sludge, getting into some of that. Looks like sort of aquatic plant material they're looking for. Yeah, look at that. Nice, soft, palatable food. And a good opportunity to cool off, and of course, relatively safe from predators when you are waist deep in some muddy water. No self-respecting lion is going to fancy jumping in there after them. They're definitely one of my favourites, waterbucks. I don't think they're often given the credit that perhaps they deserve, possibly just because they're just that little bit different from the others. That shaggy coat, those interesting secretions that the males give off. You can smell a waterbuck. Maybe that's why I like them, because there's another sense being utilized if the wind is in the right direction and there's a male waterbuck, within a few hundred meters of you, you can pick up his smell on the wind. That's sebaceous glands that sort of give off this particular chemical. Whether or not it is for as an attractant for females, or it's just to do with that oily skin secretion to help them glide through the water, a bit like people used to smear bacon grease onto them when swimming in the ocean to uh, give them to help them cut a better path. Of course, we never know. Potential opportunities that it's something to do with insect repellent as well. A lot more biting animals or biting insects in and around water. So again, lots of theories floating around as to why they might give off this pungent aroma. And it's a bit like an elephant bull in must. It's very, very distinct when you do smell it. Jungle Jim, most aggressive antelope species. Well, waterbucks can be very, very aggressive, as we've just discussed. They can have some pretty fierce territorial battles. Um, Kudus, when they decide to go for it, can also be quite nasty. I mean, anything is potentially capable of it. Bushbuck have a reputation, of course, as to being quite aggressive towards people or hunters, particularly, as well, no doubt, as each other. Not that I've ever really seen two bushbuck actually challenge one another. They've got such razor sharp horns that I think the thing is with most antelope species is that they will try not to get into any altercations because the risk of injury to yourself is always fairly great. And if you do end up with a debilitating injury, it could very much hamper your chances of survival. It makes you less likely to find a mate, less likely to defend a territory, more likely to be picked off by a predator. So you'll find that there's an awful lot of body language, a lot of displaying that is done. Classic example, of course, the Inyala and their incredible slow motion, stiff legged dance that they do around one another. So it's not all that often that antelope do come to blows. We see it a lot with impala, certainly, and you do see impalas with broken horns and sometimes with injuries. But I suppose if you pushed me for an answer, Jungle Jim, I would probably say, from my experience, the waterbuck, because they can be so more aggressive than you think. But thank you for the questions, everybody. Do keep them coming in. It's always good to get the old grey matter ticking over, file back through all of those sightings, all of those experiences, all of the things you've read and watched online whilst researching, and just generally enjoying all the wonders of nature. Speaking of which, I see there's a rather camouflaged crocodile tail sticking out of the grass on the lower right hand side of the screen. Always a reminder just to be careful in any water source in Africa. Lovely shape that powerful tail has got, just draped over a little mound of mud and vegetation there. The rest of the crocodile pretty much unseen. But he'll be warming up. Remember, winter, cooler water, cold-blooded animal. Take the opportunity to warm up in what will no doubt be a nice warm sun. Still getting up into the high 20s, or it should be during the day, and then dropping down very much to single figures at night time. Fools a lot of people to think that it's always warm in Africa. Sorry if you can hear a buzzing. There's a very annoying fly buzzing around me. It's probably coming across on the feed, although we could argue that it is actually on the camera, of course. But yes, fools a lot of people, the temperatures. I remember when I first came over, I remember one of the first evening drives that I did. Once winter had set in, it was still nice and warm during the day. I went out in a t-shirt and nothing else. And I don't know if I've ever been that cold since, even despite having visited some pretty cold places over the years. To be sitting on the back of an open game viewer that's driving through the reserve, that wind chill when it's low single figures outside. I was curled up in a ball under the seats, shivering, and pretty much, I swear, I could feel my blood crystallizing as it started to slowly freeze. I could not wait to get back, and I never made that same mistake again. So if you are going to come out on safari this time of year, which is a brilliant time of year to come out because visibility is good, Animals are under a little bit of water stress, so have to come down to water holes like this. Just remember to wrap up a little bit warmer than you might think. Fleeces, beanies, jackets, gloves, all very important. The lodges will provide you with blankets and often hot water bottles. But yeah, don't underestimate the cooler African temperatures in the evenings. Now, that's an interesting question. If crocodiles don't have to hunt much, how do they stay sharp with their hunting skills? Um, well, we can't ask them, Stella, to make sure. Maybe they go through some sort of mental routine every now and again. Um, I imagine we're down to that just sort of genetic nature nurture debate. I don't crocodiles don't really get taught. It is sheer instinct. It's had hundreds of millions of years to hone that instinct, and just not eating for a few months or potentially even more, 6 months maybe at a time. You never lose that ability to hunt. That is pure instinct. It's in their genes. It's in their makeup. Um, I'm sure with practice of certain things, they may potentially improve. We see it in other predators, things like lions. You get lion prides that will specialize in certain large prey, be they giraffe or buffalo. You'll often get a pride that will be more adept at that, but that's because of learning knowledge that is passed down from the adults to the cubs. We don't see any of that in crocodiles. There is a little bit of parental care for the first few weeks where the mother will look after the youngsters, but there is no imparting of knowledge that certainly that we are aware of. Speaking of animals with a close-knit community, I think we're going to head over to Cat Eye Pan because it sounds like we might have some elephants. I'll speak about animals that do learn from each other and communicate within a very close-knit social structure. There is the champion of them all. Some of you may have seen there was some interesting research done recently up in Kenya in Amboseli about communication amongst elephants. They monitored hundreds of different calls between animals and have discovered, we think, using various sort of AI-based algorithms, that elephants have, for fear of anthropomorphizing them, names for each other, that they can give off specific rumbles which are recognized by individuals and they react differently than the ones around them. So, a rumble that is very much aimed towards Fred. Fred will hear that and come running towards it if it's a greeting rumble, whereas Dave and Margaret and all the other elephants in that group will pretty much ignore it. So we always knew that elephants were very, very social animals with very, very close-knit bonds, but it's nice to know that we've actually got some scientific research now to back up the fact that they can recognize individuals and they talk to each other and they address certain members of their families when they are speaking. How cool is that? Who was that standing nose to nose? A couple of young bulls. Makes me think that's probably the inflow, though, of where the fresh water is being fed into the pan. We see it time and time again. Elephants will always gravitate towards the freshest water. So if there is a little pipe there, that will be why they're seemingly sharing the same spot. They'll be wrapping their trunk around it or over the opening of that pipe and taking the clean water as opposed to that muddy water that we can see in front of them. Fiona, are there more confrontations in bachelor herds than in breeding herds? Um, Likely, yes. Obviously, it depends on your definition of a confrontation, but generally, with the males having, in the majority of species at least, having elevated levels of testosterone, that leads to more aggressive behavior, particularly if there is the opportunity to court a female in the midst and for youngsters beginning to establish dominance over one another. I mean, don't get me wrong, breeding herds, the females will argue with each other. You see it in a lot of animals, zebras and things. They become protective of their young if they've got them there. But generally speaking, Fiona, yes, I would say there is more confrontation within bachelor groups than in breeding herds, but predominantly, say, because of the elevated levels of testosterone and that drive to be dominant in order to establish mating priorities. Yeah, it turns out we're going to head up to Kenya and to Oldonyo and see what's happening there. Oh, wow, look at that. A full-blooded, dazzling dazzle of zebras. To make you go cross-eyed. So you can see there'll be some altercations there. We've already seen a few hooves flying, but remember, this will be um, a group of harems. There'll be multiple harems there. There'll be stallions with their group of mares, sorry, and they will have all come together to take advantage of safety in numbers to drink. So there will be sort of infighting between those different harems. Males will be on the lookout for any other overzealous males. They're all bustling for position in and around the waterhole to get to that precious resource. So zebras particularly are quite cantankerous. It's not unusual to see lots of nipping and biting and kicking. So they are potentially the exception of the rule, where you see more aggression within a breeding herd, if indeed zebras are breeding herd. Wow, look at that. Always love to see when two individuals rear up like that. It's sort of the mecca of the zebra photograph. Two stallions leaping up at one another, preferably at sunset, kicking up a whole load of dust and that sort of cloudy, ethereal atmosphere that it can create. Mercedes being saying a zebra pileup. It certainly is. And so lots and lots of interaction and fussing and kicking and biting going on. Great to watch. So nice to see so many zebra together. We generally only see small groups down in southern Africa just because of the vegetation type there. We haven't got those large grassy plains to support massive numbers of bulk grazers, with the exception potentially of buffalo, of course. Up in East Africa, amazing to see great numbers of any animal. I was lucky enough to spend a year working up in Tanzania in Katavi National Park, but that was very much sort of similar to South African vegetation, not the wide open plains that you see in the Mara and in the Serengeti, but still supported a huge volume of wildlife. And I do remember one time driving around a corner and it was like something out of a scene from Madagascar. I just drove into this ocean of zebras. Well, thankfully didn't drive into them, but we estimated somewhere between 600 and 800 zebra, which just scattered in all directions because the animals there were not very habituated, because it's a fairly remote part of the world. But just amazing to see so many stripes moving in so many different directions. It's one of those memories, or one of many memories, that will live long with me, just to see the sheer number of animals hanging out together. And they're such a unique animal, just makes them very, very special. Nothing else like a zebra in the world. Lillian, you're asking, do they cause serious damage when they bite each other? Well, yes and no. They're not carnivores, so they don't have those big incisors, sorry, canine teeth like we see with the cats. So they're generally more sort of nips and pinches, but they can break the skin certainly. Um, so serious damage, I wouldn't say particularly. They're pretty tough-skinned animals. It's not going to be a life-threatening problem. The most common thing you see with zebras, particularly amongst the stallions, is if one is missing a tail, it may well have been bitten off during an exchange. It's much easier to get your incisors around another zebra's tail and potentially nip it off. But I wouldn't say serious damage. There, of course, always exceptions. Might be opened up to secondary infection, perhaps, if the skin is broken. But generally speaking, it's more of a deterrent, and it's what the right word is. It's not fussing. It's arguing. It's not full-blooded offense. With these occasional exception when two males really do go at it. Grant DMV, you're also saying you're expecting more aggression because there are so many of them. Well, you can see there are constant little altercations between them, um, little kicks being thrown, little nips being handed out. But it's just really sort of bustling for space more than anything else. As I said before, it doesn't make sense to get into a big conflict and risk serious injury for the sake of getting a little bit of space because you might get eaten by something. So lots of little arguments, but rarely does it really get beyond sort of gentle fisticuffs, let's put it that way. We see it ourselves, put a whole bunch of people in a pub, especially with the football going on at the moment, and there will always be a bit of pushing and shoving, but rarely does it become serious. Grant, again, yes, weather can have a role in the behavior of species. I mean, on a macro scale, it can drive migration and things, animals having to immigrate and emigrate through areas or from and to areas to find the required resources that they need. So absolutely. I mean, take a look at the Great Migration, perfect example. Those animals don't spend the entire year all together in the sort of numbers that we see, but when the rains come and the animals follow the conditions because of the resources that it provides. Certainly, from an aggression point of view, yes, again, because as resources become more and more scarce, it becomes more important for animals to have to maintain those resources, and they will defend them more vigorously if necessary. So, absolutely, weather and climate can drive extreme behaviors. Not even to mention the mating seasons as well. The majority of animals will mate at a particular time of the year, particularly the herbivores, so that their births are coincided with the comings of the rains for food, for water, for shelter, for protection. And that's all governed by not so much, all right, not so much weather conditions, perhaps more again, I'll sort of call them macro influences like length of day, particularly, and those pineal glands that animals have in their brains, which are stimulated by day length and in turn then stimulate the secretion of the hormones to bring animals into breeding status and often elevated levels of aggression. But yeah, weather plays a big role, certainly. Noticed too many youngsters within this group. They are probably there, but they're very difficult to see in this melee of stripes, which of course is one of the potential theories to protect young, or possibly because there's such a large number there and there are some hooves and teeth being brandished. Maybe those with young will wait until the chaos has settled a little bit before they come in for a drink. I've just watched these interactions, but as I said, zebras are notoriously grumpy creatures. It's one of the reasons that we haven't been able to tame them or train them. They will not be trained under any circumstances. They will do what they want to do when they want to do it. And you can sort of see elements of that behaviour coming out regularly here, which sort of leads me on to Elliot's question, which is a very loaded question, Elliot, certainly. Um, is there a way that zoos can be ethical or be more ethical? Again, very much depends on your understanding of that word, I suppose. I think all zoos personally have an absolute obligation to be ethical. But what is ethical? I think all you can really do is make that animal as comfortable as possible. So it needs to have a nice, large environment, well suited to its requirements, similar to what it's used to. There's a big push at the moment for enrichment of animals to ensure that they have enough things to do, be that yes, classic silly examples, but classic examples of sort of puzzles for the primates, those animals with larger brain capacities. They need to be stimulated. It's not a very rewarding experience to stay in one place for the entire time. So big push towards enrichment, but yeah, are zoos ethical in the first place? I mean, that's a whole other debate, which maybe I'm going to be a bit of a wuss here, but I'm not going to get into that now. Do they have a place? Possibly they do. They raise awareness. They can protect gene pools. but it's always much nicer to see an animal in its natural habitat like this. That's you asking if zebras get tumours. Well, see, I'm not a vet, so it's hard for me to give you any sort of accurate response. I have seen zebras with lumps on them. Whether those are cysts or whether they are tumours, I'm not 100% sure. I would imagine that they probably do, although it's not something we hear a great deal about. There are certainly some animals which seem to be less likely to get tumours, elephants and whales being a couple of examples. I think I spoke about this last month. There's been quite a lot of research done on those animals. Something else as well, maybe a golden mole or a mole rat or something, um, that very, very rarely do get tumours. And it's all to do with a particular genetic code of which I cannot remember the names of them or the numbers, but I remember, for example, we only have two of these codes which combat mutation within genes, whereas things like elephants and whales have 20 something pairs of these codes, which are far better at eradicating mutated cells. And it's possibly an adaptation that some species in nature have come up with that are relatively long lived to combat this problem. It's one of the reasons that cancer becomes more prevalent with age, because that's multiple cell replications, multiple chances of mutations occurring that can have this sort of negative impact. But some animals seem to have developed a bit of a defense mechanism to nip those problems in the cell bud, as it were. But I'm not sure about zebras specifically. I have, as I said, I've seen a couple with strange lumps on them, but whether or not they are tumours per se, I'm not unfortunately qualified to really say. Harriers, in terms of keeping track of their foals and their mares within their harem, most of it will be done by smell, as are most things in the animal kingdom. Everybody will have a unique signature, and it's not just a smell; it's far more in depth than the smell as we would consider it. It is a sort of a chemical hodgepodge of particular hormones that is unique to every animal and will help them identify them. There is some talk that they can recognize the stripe patterns, that foals will key off their mother's stripe patterns, particularly around the front shoulder, because that's sort of eye height when they're young. So most of it will be done through smell, possibly some sight, although in a situation like this, you would think that would become very confusing on the eyes. So smell more than anything. Jan Mello, you're commenting that despite the fact that all the stripe patterns are different, it's very difficult to pinpoint those differences in such a group. I agree with you completely. To me, it's just a wash of black and white stripes. But if you do line them all up next to one another and look at them, you will see distinct differences, the shapes, the undulations, the widths of all of those stripes. But there are subtle differences, and there are many, many, many zebras in the world. Um, and if indeed everyone is unique, they're going to be very slight differences, certainly. But as I said, I mean, we look at them from a visual perspective, whereas most animals will, as we were just discussing, recognize each other on using a far more of an olfactory basis for this identification purpose than visual. But I guess probably to a zebra, if you put a crowd of people together, we would also look very, very similar. But we rely on visual acuity and visual differences, particularly in facial recognition. And we can look into a crowd of people and spot that everybody does look different. So I think very much depends on your, uh, again, your sort of nature and your genetics, what your brain is trained to do. It does make you wonder, doesn't it? When animals see a big busload of safari goers, they probably think they all look the same. How can they possibly tell one another apart? Right, well, that was a pretty awesome spectacle of all the zebras. Sounds like we've got some more elephants. I didn't quite catch where we go, so let's go have a look. Oh, yeah, we've got elephants in Angora on the northern Saudi sands. Lovely lodge. I've been to this one, and this lovely waterhole out in the open just in front of the lodge, assuming this is that waterhole. The amazing views for guests. I imagine a far more sedate affair than we've just witnessed up at Caledonia between these family members. Elephants, of course, much more disciplined than zebras, and so what we were witnessing before would have been multiple harems all coming together, so there will always be a little bit of infighting. This will be one family and very well marshaled by the older members of the group, the older females. So not too much nonsense will be tolerated. You'll always get some young males who'll have a bit of a push and a shove, but if it gets a little bit too boisterous, then normally that behaviour is stamped down on pretty quickly. Anime, I didn't actually see the incident this morning with Steve and an elephant coming very close to him. I'm not sure if it was an adult or a youngster. Do I think they're sometimes testing their limits? Well, I think they do. They are such intelligent animals. I think sometimes they do. They play a few games. They probably test their limits, particularly the youngsters. Um, they need to be stimulated, like we were saying before. Those enrichment activities. Not that we are an enrichment activity, but we are something interesting. Elephants are curious. They are intelligent. They will come and have a look. They understand body language, they understand living together in a group and how those interactions occur. So I do believe that sometimes the elephants just come and I don't want to say cause trouble because they often don't, but they like to come in for a look around and see what behavior is exhibited. It's one of the reasons that whilst obviously it becomes a judgment call, but it's not always a good idea to run away or drive away from a potentially aggressive elephant because you are teaching that elephant that every time he is aggressive towards a car, it will leave. And they will get used to that and potentially become more aggressive because they want the car to go. That's when it becomes our responsibility as guides to read the body language of that animal and hopefully leave that area before it becomes or the animal feels it necessary to flex its muscles, as it were. But youngsters, certainly, they are learning how to be adults. They're learning how to be confrontational, particularly the young boys. And they do like to sort of push their luck. And it's one of my favorite things about being out on a game drive is coming across those youngsters who come and sort of test their might against the cars just to see, test their bottle, if you will. Just always have to be aware that mum may not be okay with this, and if suddenly the baby gets a fright and gives off an alarm call, then you do just need to be a little bit wary of how mum what might react to a potential threat. But they are such entertaining animals to watch and to be around and to don't really want to use the word interact with because we shouldn't be interacting with them, but they do sometimes choose to interact with us. Hello, little one. Yes, we're talking about you. One's your age and younger. Hmm? Are you nervous about the camera, or is there something behind that we can't see? You saw that behavior there with the tail out, sort of erect like that. It's usually a sign of stress. You can see there's from their body language something was bothering them there. Camera wasn't moving. I could understand maybe a moving camera might have made them a little nervous. Where did they go? There they go. Roseanne, you ask about those dents on their forehead. Can they be used to tell age and sex? I would say sex, no, not from the dents. We do look at the shape of a forehead to help with sexing an elephant, although it is a general rule of thumb. A male's forehead is normally more rounded, a female is more squarish, more angular as a general rule. But yes, I would agree that the dents can help with a very generalized estimation of age. Young elephants generally don't have those um, sort of submerged temples. That's not the right word. What's the word I want? There's sort of indentations on the temples. Concave, that's a better word. And with age, they become far more pronounced. So you will see very much an older elephant will have much bigger depressions on the side of the temples than a younger one. But, there isn't a scale that you could say, oh, it's 12 or it's 36 or it's 48. But you can tell the difference between an older elephant and a younger elephant, certainly. So just general size will help. Elephants never really stop growing, and particularly if you see them head on, a big adult, fully grown, mature bull will have very wide. face, a very wide bridge of the nose across the base of the trunk. They fill out as they get older. Okay, well, these ellies have disappeared into the guarri thickets there, but a nice little view whilst we saw them. So we're going to head up to Victoria Falls now, and I think we've got some bird activity. So cool that we're able to hop between the eastern extreme of South Africa, the northwestern extreme. We've been to Kenya, we've been into the Sabi Sands, and now we're up in Zimbabwe at Vic Falls. And there's a brief marabou stork, looks like a great egret at the back, a couple of yellow-billed storks, and a beautiful impala ram. A skittish impala ram. All those shadows of those birds flying overhead. It's quite cool to see. So usually a lot of vultures at this pan. Excuse me. Which I would imagine are all those shadows that we can see circling above us. Wow, look at that. Riding the thermals. Beautiful with the colours up there as well. How very peaceful. Quite a few marabou storks, finding some little morsels. Not sure what they'll be after. They do eat fish and so well known for their scavenging. We're just picking up some little arthropods in the water there as well. Just having a little read on my bird app about the diet of marabou storks, trying to figure out what it is that they were perhaps afterwards there. And something don't remember reading before is they're able to sometimes hunt, if that's the right word, flamingos. Reports of them um, running into flocks of flamingos and stabbing them in the back with their bills, and then drowning the flamingo and eating them. That's pretty amazing, unless you're a flamingo. It's a ridiculous flap of skin, of course, used in breeding displays, hanging under the throat there. Odd looking thing. A big throat pouch also potentially used for cooling as well, increase the surface area, get a bit of a breeze running across it, lots of vessels and that membranous surface. Just help with a little bit of a draft. Lillian, in terms of a difference in texture of birds of prey and other bird feathers, um, again, I'm sort of educated guesses here more than anything else. I would say birds of prey feathers are generally a little bit more sturdy, but that may well be something to do with the fact that I'm thinking of larger birds of prey. We often do find sort of vulture feathers and eagle feathers, particularly the flight feathers that have come out. And you're talking about a big, heavy bird in the scheme of things, so those feathers need to be very, very sturdy to support the rigors of flight of such a heavy animal. Um, so I suppose if you compared the flight feather of a dove to that of a vulture, it's certainly a lot more sturdy and fibrous, wiry, I suppose. But birds have different types of feathers. They have flight feathers, they have tail feathers, they have down feathers, they have semi-plumes, they have phyllo-plumes. There are lots of different types of feathers, and all birds' downy feathers are nice and soft. Those are the ones sort of on the main bulk of the body, which are there from an insulation perspective. But certainly, I would say with the flight feathers, the bigger the bird, the more hardy the feather. Claro, vultures are capable of hunting, but very, very rarely do they hunt for themselves. Yes, there are some reserves that feed vultures. We hear about these vulture restaurants, of which there is up there at Vic Falls. Um, and that's we're doing that because vultures have become so endangered, horribly so, over the last sort of 10 to 20 years. A lot of reasons, habitat loss, particularly, of course, the problems of poisoning vultures, the traditional medicine market. Unfortunately, everything has sort of happened at once and has severely affected all vulture populations. So they're capable of hunting, but generally speaking, they are specialised at scavenging. You can see this hooded vulture, as with most vultures, not many feathers on the head, so it doesn't get all gunked up with the rather unpleasant things that it's eating. Um, and the nice thing about so the nice thing is the wrong word, but you know what I mean. About being a vulture is there is always mortality in the animal kingdom, and somebody somewhere has to fill that niche of feeding on that dead stuff. Otherwise, it would just go putrid. It would lead to disease, flies, and all sorts of other horrible things. And that's just what vultures specialize in, and the storks for that matter as well. The marabou stork does. So things will always die, unfortunately. It's an inevitability. No animal will live forever. So there is a constant renewable food source for those animals that can take advantage of it. I personally have never seen a vulture hunting. I don't think I've ever spoken to anybody who has seen a vulture successfully hunt anything, but they certainly have been recorded doing it. Oh, hello, Morty. Always bring a smile to your face, the warthog. What a character. See the stork on the left standing with his beak open. One of the only places that a stork or a bird can sort of sweat is through the tongue, so there's mucous membranes on the tongue. And again, by standing with their mouth open, it will just allow the breeze to whip across the tongue and help with evaporative cooling. Oh, and a bit of a yawny stretch as well. And you'll often see them sort of pulsing that tongue as well. A little bit, well, same principle as a dog panting, basically. Good to keep those muscles in good condition as well. Give it a good stretch out. Jungle Gym, yes, I have seen birds of prey fighting in the sky with each other. Um, they will it's actually amazing to witness the those sort of aerial dogfighting skills that they have. They'll sort of swoop towards each other, and in the last minute they turn their talons, and then they lock talons, and sometimes they'll lock together and spiral down towards the floor. Occasionally that ends badly, but it's an incredible thing to witness, certainly. But they're so agile that generally speaking, there's no harm done. I actually was lucky enough to go and watch a falconry display not that long ago, and they had some peregrine falcons there. Of course, the fastest animal in the world. It's clocking in at speeds of over 400 kilometers an hour on a dive. And they had sort of a lure that they were swinging around. And again, it's that sort of enrichment activity. And these peregrines are coming swooping in and almost catching the lure. And every now and again, they would let it catch the lure, obviously, because it has to win the game sometime from an enrichment perspective. But a really, really great place that I went to. And the thing that amazed me the most is none of those birds are kept, or when they come out and do their flight, if they wanted to fly away, they could. They choose not to. So that was pretty amazing to me. Yes, they are kept in their enclosures, and when it's time to do the flights, they come out. But if they just decided, you know what, I've had enough, they will fly off. But they get looked after nicely, they get fed, they have the opportunity to fly regularly, a few times a day. I actually really enjoyed it. They're such beautiful birds. I saw some amazing birds there. Siberian eagle owls did some flight actually. We saw some hooded vultures flying around, some kites. It was actually a really, really interesting day out. And to get up close and personal with some of these birds, because they'll come and sit on the post right in front of where you're sitting, and you could really see them in all their glory. Hardly a ripple. Love the way they sort of sink their bodies down, and the last thing to disappear is their snout. Such an ominous creature. It's actually quite nice when we were having a close up of those yellow-billed storks. We saw that one stretch out the wings. You actually saw some of that more pinkish tinge to the feathers, almost flamingo-like. Don't often see that in person. I'd say there are so many feathers on a bird, all these different types of feathers as well. There's a lot hiding under the surface. I wonder if that's also possibly a sign of breeding status as well. Laying dates for storks in Zimbabwe. I just had a quick check. Do seem to be or can be sort of July, August seems to be the most common. So we would be in breeding season now. Incubation period normally around about the 30-35 day mark, I would think. But very difficult to sex yellow-billed storks like many animals, many birds. I don't think there is any difference between them. There's that lovely little pink. So you can see with the wind gusting it up, gusting those whiter feathers up. So I wonder if that's a male displaying a little bit more vibrancy this time of year. Grant preen glands, which we may have seen some activity of there, that oil or uropygial gland is its proper name, being transferred to the feathers to keep them in good condition, antibiotic properties, etc., etc. The majority of birds have them, but not all of them. Some of them don't. Some of them have what are called powder down feathers, because some birds don't want oily secretions on their feathers, which would also give them some buoyancy and stop their feathers getting waterlogged because they have to dive. So you wouldn't want, you want your body weight to increase so you don't float to the surface the whole time if you're diving down deep to look for fish. So powder down are particular types of feathers. We see it, I think, in flamingos, but certainly in herons, which is a particular feather that grows on the chest, and they continuously grow, and they sort of as they the tips of those feathers crumble away and almost create a talcum powder, which is then uh, picked up by the bird in the beak and rubbed into the feathers around the body. It has the same principle. It's got good things in there to keep the feathers in good condition and also to fight against any microbial things that might be living in the feathers, just to make sure that sort of fungal things or um, little ectoparasites. So the majority of the birds, preen glands, yes, but not all of them. A few that have this powder down feathers. And do they preen each other to initiate mating? Certainly, some do. It's all part of it. But they'll also do it themselves, as we can see here. But yes, you will see more tactile um, communication going on between breeding pairs. Sounds like we've got a giraffe somewhere, so let's go and enjoy a giraffe. A few zebras still milling about, but they have vacated the area long enough for this nice, looks like a young bull giraffe to come in for a drink. So close, buddy, so close. You'll try again. The zebras didn't take long to take advantage of the gap that he'd left. Let's start that whole stretching process again. Oh, such an effort. Go on, go on. Oh, there we go. Oh, shame. So they have to be so alert. They are particularly vulnerable in that position. If anything else reacts, they will also react. See them all looking over to the right, whether that's some human presence there or something is just attracting their attention, just making them twitch every now and again. And it doesn't take much for that poor giraffe to undo all of that hard work of manipulating his body to get down to the water. That's unlucky. Hope he can enjoy a stress-free drink this time. It just takes one of those zebras to twitch, and all the others twitch, and that behaviour knocks onto the giraffe. Stresses on that knee. Always very alert. Very highly strung animal. It's such a graceful animal. It moves so smoothly yet ungainly. It never looks like it's almost therapeutic to watch a giraffe, but when they come and drink, they're so highly strung. All those behaviorally and physiologically, all those tendons, all those muscles being stretched to breaking point. So worried about something sneaking up on them in that rather a position where they can't move quickly if they have to, and just the slightest movement is enough to trigger them and have them spring back up and ready for action. Henriette, how often is this waterhole filled? I'm afraid I don't know. It'll be very much up to the reserve management practice of El Doño and whoever it is who makes those decisions, the ecologist, the reserve management team. You'll get some waterholes that are consistently pumped to keep the water level at a particular amount. Others will only pump if the water looks as if it's going to dry up. So hard to say how often it's filled. Looking at this, it's a lot less than there was a few months ago. So it's possible that they let it completely drain down, or when it becomes a problem, they just give it a topper. But say every reserve will have its own different management strategies. It'll all be discussed for what they feel is for the benefit of not only the animals, but for the environment in general. Because it can be a problem if you have a constant, really good water source throughout the year. Remember, you are encouraging animals to remain in that area because there is constant water sources available, and that puts a great deal of stress and pressure on the vegetation there, particularly for if it's herbivore animals there. And also the soil, the constant trampling, the inability of new shoots to come through. So it's a good thing to rotate your water holes. Tortoise just at the bottom right of the screen. I think there's a tortoise. Just see a shell moving. Poor giraffe is in this horrible position and has got all those little oxpeckers flitting around his face and his eyes. It's very awkward. I'm sure I saw a tortoise in the bottom right-hand corner. I don't know if at some point we can have a look. I'm afraid I don't know what species of tortoise we particularly get up in Kenya. Shame those oxpeckers are really harassing him. Oxpecker's also having a drink. I think the giraffes thought better of it now. It's too much stress. Right, well, it seems our giraffe has had enough. And we'll have to just wonder whether that was a tortoise. I'm pretty sure it was. But we're going to head over to some elephants at Tau in Madikwe. Well, hopefully these elephants will come down for a drink, but they seem to be quite content milling around by the tree line at the moment. One might be slowly taking the plunge. Nice to see that little delicate young male impala there in contrast to the bulk of the elephants in the background. Actually wondered what that impala was eating. It looks, you can see that reddish colour there. That's old elephant dung there. And of course, there's a lot of undigested material in that. Impalas are browsing animals as well as grazing animals. I wonder if there was perhaps something vegetative which was worth the impala having a nibble on there. It did look as if he was picking something up out of that old dung. Well, they're possibly too old to really have kept any nutritional value, but you never know. Animals do strange things. You can see some puffs of dust coming across on the wind. I wonder if there's an elephant somewhere having a bit of a dust bath. You can see this female moving towards us, very square head we were talking about before. She's also secreting temporal fluid from the sides of her head, some form of emotional response to something. This might be a nice opportunity if they come a little bit closer to continue discussing what we were talking about before about aging an elephant or estimating an elephant's maturity stage by looking at those depressions around the forehead. If we can compare some youngsters to some older individuals. don't see any others that are producing those secretions. Just seem to be this one. Maybe that's why she's off on her own. Something is bothering her and she's taking a little time out. Maybe she was happy to come and have some water. It doesn't have to be a stress related reaction. It could be excitement, it could be enjoyment, it could be happiness. Nice little greeting going on in the background between those three as well. Lots of trunk touching. Tracy, good question. Would elephants in South Africa be able to adapt to conditions in other parts of Africa? Um, To an extent, yes. I mean, if you throw a savanna elephant into a forest, it would struggle. And likewise, if you took a forest elephant and put it in the savanna, I think it would struggle as well. But I think elephants are pretty adaptable. Their diet is so varied that I believe they would be able to find a sufficient amount of food. Obviously, what would hanker them would not having the knowledge of that area, not having the knowledge of a matriarch and the older animals to know where to go in times of stress if food was scarce or if water was scarce. Not having that knowledge of how to find those things under stress might be difficult. But elephants are bulk feeders. They eat a huge variety. They eat grass, they eat fruits, they eat leaves, they eat twigs and cambium. They'll dig up roots and tubers. I have no doubt that they would find a sufficient amount of food. It would be a different scenario, I think a more difficult scenario for a ruminant animal as opposed to a hindgut fermenter. So the different types of digestive system, those animals with four chambers of stomach have to eat good quality produce because it remains in the body for a long time and everything is extracted from it. So possibly not being able to find that type of food may hamper them a little bit, but I think the majority of savanna elephants would survive if you took some of these and put them up in Kenya, for example. They would probably do okay. This one moonwalking in the background. That's what we were talking about before. This youngster chasing the wildebeest away for no apparent reason except that he can. And I'm going to say he because I'm pretty confident that's a young boy. We see that time and time again. That's what they do to the vehicles. They do like to flex those muscles, all part of the learning curve of becoming one day a big, strong, dominant bull elephant. It's so funny to see those ears outstretched, everything rocking from side to side as they trundle along. The wildebeest just thought, ah, no, probably not a good idea to get in the way of that just in case. Hopefully this little group will come down. That little youngster's full of beans this morning, so much personality. You can see he's leading the way. Interesting to watch the reaction of this female. So she was off on her own with that emotional response. Be interesting to see how she deals with coming into her personal space, whether she's a bit crotchety. She looks all right at the moment. Yeah, maybe just seeking some quiet time. Good for all of us. Inquisitive approach from this one. Hey, you all right? Yeah. Mhm. You see that very angular forehead. Look, that's almost exactly a right angle, but a very um, squarish head. These males more rounded, and you can see those depressions on the forehead and just the size of the head in general. If we compare it to the one who's having a drink at the moment, definite differences. There's very little evidence of those depressions. Hard to say from here, but looks like more of a rounded forehead, so possibly a young male. But say it's not a steadfast rule. Easier just to look between the back legs. I don't see any mammary glands there, so I'm thinking probably a young male. Amy, I think all animals are protective over their young. Yes, we see it a lot in elephants, but you'll see it in, I say, any animal, because not every animal exhibits parental care, but the majority of mammals certainly. Anyone who's ever inadvertently walked into a lioness with cubs will know that a lioness will certainly protect her investments as well. Um, so I think all animals do it. I think maybe we just see it more with elephants because it's more obvious, and because of that close-knit family group, it's often an entire reaction of the whole group to protect the young, as it is from an individual. I mean, we see it with buffalo. We've all talked about the mobbing behavior of them chasing away predators and rescuing youngsters from the jaws of a lion. So yeah, we see it time and time again. Seen wildebeest females trying to take on a leopard to save their youngsters. So I think there is just that innate requirement to look after your offspring, to protect them at all costs, regardless of the outcome or the potential outcome to yourself. Maybe we just see it more obviously in elephants because they're a little bit more emotive, and we seem to sort of connect to them on a slightly deeper level just because of the way that they are and the way they come across. Pat, do female elephants join other herds for any reason? I'm sure they do, but it's not something that we hear about regularly. Sometimes herds will split, and entire sort of groups will move apart but stay together. But I'm sure from time to time they do immigrate into other groups and join other family groups. You'll often find that there would be a distant relationship, perhaps an auntie or a cousin, or some form of family bond there. So it's not something that I know of happening regularly. I have seen elephant cows just on their own, not as part of a group. It's very difficult to know for sure, of course, whether one has joined up with another group for safety, whether they would be accepted. I would think they probably would be, just because, again, possibly because we feel we sort of empathize with them a little bit better. I feel somehow in my own brain that elephants would be more accommodating. Um, but it's not something, certainly to my knowledge, that happens very regularly. Generally speaking, a female elephant will remain with her natal herd for the entirety of her life. So, magnificent prehistoric predator. So nice shots to get an idea of the girth of a crocodile. They're often a lot bigger than you think. You generally only see the heads, but they can be very wide, a meter wide in some cases, if not more. Outlying on the open like this, you really get an appreciation of the size of this animal. They can weigh more than a ton, a big crocodile. You can see that rather ominous looking tooth just sticking out halfway down the muzzle there. Of course, one of the main differences between a croc and an alligator, you wouldn't find that in an alligator. All their teeth are um, contained when the jaws are closed. The crocodile has a sharper snout, a more tapered snout. Alligators more broad snout. He's spread eagled himself or herself on the soil there, maximising the surface area to sunbathe. As past, I've never seen footage of a crocodile trying to attack a baby elephant. I don't know, possibly maybe I have somewhere on a documentary. I've certainly, it's not something that I've ever witnessed before. I've seen crocodiles take an antelope here and there, but never of a young elephant. Of course, the classic just so stories, the Rudyard Kiplings of how the elephant got its trunk. Um, I believe it certainly has happened that crocodile has latched hold of an elephant's trunk and possibly severed a trunk or two over the years. But again, I don't think it happens very, very often. It's fairly futile of the crocodile unless it's a very, very young elephant. And as we were saying before, mothers, particularly in elephants, are very, very conscientious. They rarely will let their youngsters go down to the water alone, particularly if there is a risk of crocodiles. Um, and I don't think there are many stupid enough crocodiles to try their luck against a full-grown elephant. So it's not something that I've ever witnessed. I try possibly maybe pseudo memory is saying I've seen a photograph or seen a clip somewhere of a crocodile grabbing hold of an elephant's trunk. But it makes me think that it's more of a reflex action than a conscious decision to attempt to subdue that animal. But certainly, less than 6 months old, or possibly even a bit bigger than that for a large crocodile, it's possible. Once the croc has got the elephant in the water and got it under the water, if it can drown it, that doesn't take long, and then fair game. Excuse me. Rian, it is a peaceful afternoon at town. Everybody on a bit of a go slow. Nice to see such diversity of wildlife there as well. Many different bird species, teals, spoonbills, shelducks, plovers. And we've had elephants, wildebeest, zebra, impala. Nice to see so many different rungs of that ecosystem all existing together. And it never fails to deliver. Tower Waterhole. I've been there myself. I've seen lions at this waterhole, countless elephants, always general game around, and even on the few occasions where there's no mammalian activity, there's always bird life. I've got a few lifers at this dam, a great reed warbler and an icterine warbler, I think. No, an olive tree warbler. Sorry, those were the two that I got in and around this waterhole a few years ago. Also, my first black-faced waxbill I saw on a drive at Madikwe whilst staying at Tau, wasn't at this waterhole. And a short-clawed lark, if I recall, as well, out on the reserve. That was another lifer in Madikwe. James, have I seen more Ellies at Jamala or here at Tau? So, for those of you who don't know, Jamala is another waterhole, another lodge on Madikwe. So, Tau is right up in the northwest of the reserve, and Jamala down in the southeast. So, they are separated by quite a few kilometres. Um, I would say, in terms of sheer number, I've probably seen more at Tau because they seem to come and go quite regularly. But we've had some incredible sightings of elephants drinking at Jamala. I remember one a few weeks ago or about a month ago where, well, there must have been 50 or 60 elephants there and they stayed there for hours on end. We watched them for most of the show. Saw all sorts of interesting interactions, more comings and goings. So hard to say. It depends where the elephants happen to be at the time, I suppose. But Tower never fails to deliver. looks to be a fairly old elephant at the back again. You can see the depressions on the forehead. Look at the way the shoulder blades are also sort of sticking up a little bit because the back is sagging somewhat. Does look like an older individual, that certainly. Possibly with a young calf just to the left. I can see some movement by her back legs. Maybe beginning to lose some condition. Of course, when they do reach their twilight years, those teeth are less effective than they once were. That sixth and final set of teeth is beginning to get ground down. Not enough nutrition can be extracted from it. And the elephant slowly starts to show signs of malnutrition, for want of a better word. Yeah, possibly some courting waterbucks. Or they're sitting with faces turned to get away from one another. Maybe not a good sign. Really beautiful faces on a waterbuck, as I said at the beginning. It's how we sort of pretty much started the live at the Waterhole stay with Waterbuck. And not that long left to go now, so a nice sort of full circle. But one of my favourite antelopes. Very pretty features, that beautiful heart-shaped nose, very soft, doleful eyes. So lovely markings. What have you seen, Gertie? See the way those ears are pricked forward like a couple of radar dishes. Very much checking something out over there, whether it was movement, maybe some other waterbuck coming in. So it was ruminating quite happily beforehand, now has pretty much stopped. Sporadic rumination now. Hmm. That's just checking us out. Oh, good stretch. See the eyes look a bit more relaxed now, whatever it was. Possibly some people moving around. Where she's looking towards the camera is where the lodge is, so maybe there was some activity um, in front of one of the rooms or by the fence that just attracted her attention. It didn't seem to bother him very much. No, whatever it was doesn't seem to be causing too much distress. So I think we're going to head over to Cat-Eyed Pan up in Balule and see what's afoot up there. If that's west, I should say. We've got a beautiful giraffe bull. Should be able to watch that very dexterous tongue coming out and wrapping around those leaves. Looks like feeding on a leadwood. tongue acting like a little lasso and just pulling the branches towards the mouth. But most of those leaves are just being plucked off by those rather sort of callousy lips, similar to a rhino or a hippo. These animals generally don't use their teeth to bite off the leaves, they'll just use those prehensile lips. Oop, it's like a chameleon's tongue. Of course, we can't really see it here, but that tongue is very, very dark, a little bit backlit from this angle. A couple of theories on that. One is that an excess of melanin just stops it from getting damaged by the sun, because they do spend a lot of time doing exactly this, popping that tongue in and out um, whilst feeding. It also suggests a lot less blood vessels in there because, of course, their favourite food is the uh, very thorny trees. We see them eating a lot of sickle bushes, a lot of the Senegalias and Bachelias, formerly acacias, lots of things with thorns and spines, and you don't want to get pricked on the tongue. If any of you have ever cut your tongue, you know it bleeds very, very badly for us. But that dark tongue suggests a lot less of a network of blood vessels and capillaries, at least close to the surface. And it's a good mechanism to stop um, too much blood if they do have little injury. Of course, having a diet of tannins as well, which is the chemical we find in a lot of these leaves out in Africa, that very dry taste you get at the back of your mouth from a tea bag or too much red wine for some of us. That also has a coagulatory effect and does close up um, vessels and things very, very quickly in capillaries. If you've had a tooth extracted, it's not a bad idea to put a tea bag in your mouth. It just closes everything up. So lots of mechanisms to deal with little pricks, cuts, and scrapes. Warren, you are very welcome for all the spectacular sightings. It has been a lovely day, actually. Lots of things happening. So here we are down to the last couple of minutes now, but we've had elephants, giraffes, crocodiles. I particularly enjoyed the waterbuck, but I think the highlight of today was that great group of zebras and watching all their little interactions and kicks and bucking and jumping and snipping at one another. That was very, very interesting to see. I hope you've also enjoyed it. If you've got any highlights, do let us know. Every day is different. Well, we are inside the last minute, so thanks so much for joining us again today. I'll be back again tomorrow at the same time, 12:30 African time. And yeah, we will do it all again. Don't forget to catch up with the latest stuff going on our other locations this afternoon with our sunset safari. But thank you very much for spending the hours with me. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. And we will do it all again tomorrow afternoon.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the tent. Hello, my name is Steve. I'm joined by Paul. We are out here in Djuma Private Game Reserve, and this is on safari. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. We hope you are doing well on this wonderful Friday, the 21st of June. Happy winter solstice. Happy summer solstice. Yesterday until today, with the full moon shining today, wherever you are in the world. I'm looking forward to its rising a little bit later. Welcome on board the 24-hour highlight reel here in Juma, called On Safari, where your questions and your comments, everyone, are valuable to us. So please do send them through using the appropriate hashtag WildEarth on Twitter, or throw them in on the YouTube chat stream. We'd love to hear from you as always, so please do send them through. Okay, now we're going to start off with, considering it's Feline Friday, with a very special highlight down in Amakhala, where yesterday evening Eric had an animal that I haven't yet managed to get on camera.
There's a caracal in this bush. It looks like it's hunting something, stalking something. Not too sure. Let's try. I don't want to try an inch forward. I mean, someone's already seen this caracal. Oh, there it is. Oh my goodness, look at that. Look at that. You joking. Look at her. Oh, I love these kitty cats. They are such cool things. Their hunting ratio is much better than that of a lion, a leopard, and a cheetah. No ways. I saw one about 4 days ago. That's definitely not this one. It was on the very far side of the reserve. I'm still very lucky to see him. About maybe, in 2022, we actually had multiple caracal sightings in one day. There was a week where we saw one specific caracal every single day. They definitely do make sounds. They hiss, they growl. I've heard a caracal hissing, and I've heard it growling. It's not something that you. Oh my goodness! These cats can jump and pounce. This has been absolutely astounding. Oh my goodness, kitty cat! How did you do that? Have you got a mouse? He's got a mouse. He's got the mouse. Wow.
Well, it looks more like a rat that cat caught, but call it a mouse if you'd like, Eric. Truly, truly spectacular. I mean, Eric's just showing off there with him telling us how often they saw caracals previously. I haven't seen a caracal since 2017. There you have it. I've only seen a couple in my life, not very, very many. But how splendid is it to see them? And Mindy, the caracal sighting was awesome, was it not? I mean, just listen to Eric's voice. Isn't that just something? Even though he's seen a few of them in his life, you know how special it is to see a caracal. They're not easily seen. And to get one hunting, you saw that jump that it did there. It's remarkable how easily they can jump. I mean, clearly they're filling a different niche in the environment to a leopard, although leopards will also hunt mice and birds. Caracals sort of specialize on that sort of prey animal. They're much smaller prey in the longer grass, the ability to jump, very much like that of a serval, that have quite a nice overlap with regards to prey selection, and that ability to jump and spring and be very, very quick is obviously very, very ideal. You see it walking down the road. It's obviously got a little bit of a weird way that it walks. The way that its body posture is shaped is obviously able to jump more than to run, or to run long distances, or to sprint. More of a springer, like a tiger, I suppose, in Winnie the Pooh books. Darcy Miller, the caracal at Amakama, seems so relaxed. It definitely was very relaxed. I mean, all of you have been watching the show long enough to know when an animal is relaxed or not. And if you can get a caracal on camera for more than a few seconds, it's generally quite relaxed, because, we know that they like to move off. And Paul, have you seen a caracal yet?
Yeah, lives with Madikwe.
In Madikwe.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've seen one in the Sabi Sands years ago when I was down south in Singita. I was working at the Singita Lodge there, just on a little stint from my other Singita property in Kruger. And we drive along, and the tracker on the front of my seat was like, not on my seat, in front of the car was like, there's a caracal. I was looking and looking. Eventually I saw it, but they actually, I think we drive past more than we think. They just have to sit down and they are invisible. But super, super special to spend time with caracals. Catherine, you haven't seen a caracal since 2005. Well, that has been a very, very long time for you. I hope you managed to catch a glimpse of one again. But notice how much greener it is in Amakala there compared to up here. The dryness, there's so much drier up here than down in the south. But how splendid. I mean, just Eric's voice there of his enthusiasm with, first of all, the jumping, running down the road, jumping, and then catching the rat. I think it was more like a rat. Anyway, I'm no rodent expert. Anyway, we're going to be moving on. Yesterday afternoon, Mr. Cedric, let me just move this across. Mr. Cedric had a wonderful sighting with one of our very common birds here, a lilac-breasted roller.
Wow, look at this. We've got a lilac-breasted roller, but it's got like a snake, like a blind snake, a mole snake or something, some sort of snake in its beak. And you can see it's smacking it against the ground, trying to kill it. This is amazing. It looks like a little mole snake, but I'm just from where we are now. I'm not too sure exactly what it is. I'm going to get my binoculars to see if I can get a closer look here. But this lilac-breasted roller's got definitely a proper snack here. Might be a legless skink. I have to try and just look carefully up here. As I say, I've got my binocs out here. It's got little legs on it. I think it's some kind of skink. They swallowed it, huh?